Reading started when I was a small child. My grandmother was a elementary school teacher, and so all the cousins could read before we ever got into kindergarten. The first book I had to read was Winnie the Pooh, and what a great book! Of course, Dr. Seuss, probably one of the top 3 authors of the 20th century, in my opinion. Big start, and so my younger years were basically the normal books, Dr. Seuss, the kids' books, and magazines. My mom was a big believer in getting kids to read magazines, so I always had a Ranger subscription. But of course, the most influential magazine I ever read was the Sports Illustrated Swimsuit edition.
So I moved to the United States when I was 9 years old, and by then I'd already grown up in Korea. My first language was Korean, and I really was only able to practice my English once I was at school, because at home I also only spoke Korean. And that was hard because you're only at school for a few hours a day. Over the weekends, I didn't speak any English, I spoke Korean at home. And so I had to start finding ways to practice English on my own, and that was through reading and watching movies and blah, blah, blah. And reading books was the best escape for me because I was kind of a loser at that age, and so I didn't have that many friends, and my books were my friends, I guess, as dirty as that sounds.
When I was in the 3rd grade, I lost my hearing. So I struggled reading. I mean, big time. Pronouncing words, I didn't get the phonics thing, so I couldn't look at a word and pronounce it. And I was made fun of. Especially, and the same kids I went to school with had to go to Sunday school with me. And we would sit in a circle and take turns reading our Sunday school book, and they would, before I could even say a word, they would spurt it out. It was just awful. And if the teacher called on me to read in class, I felt like my heart was right there just choking me.
Reading for me was like drinking water. It was a need instead of just something mandatory by the teachers. No, I have enjoyed reading since I was 5 when my mom taught me how to read.
And growing up, I used to read Nancy Drew. I used to read the Hardy Boys, and I mean, a lot of times whenever you read those mystery books and stuff like that, sometimes it will put you in that mindset, to find out different things, and really it would take you on an adventure.
When I was a kid, I started reading comic books, and it was interesting to me. I read comic books about World War II. My grandfather had served in World War II, so I thought that was neat. And I progressed from comic books to my mother actually joined a book club, and occasionally she would order me a book if I saw one that I liked.
Growing up, I didn't like to read. I was a good reader. I always scored well on tests, but just didn't like it. I'd rather play ball or do whatever. But as I got out of college, and a good friend of mine, she introduced me to reading crime novels, and she gave me books by John Grisham, and I just fell in love with it. And I can read a whole book in a couple of days if it's a good book.
From my country, English is actually the language of instruction, and when I was in high school, I think that I was born in English, so I started reading novels of Karl Wertheimer, and that I was hooked on love stories and fictions and all.
In the 8th grade, we had a brand new teacher, first year teacher, and she made us read the Tales of Huckleberry Finn. Oh, that was the hardest book for me to read. It was a little paperback, but I stuck with it, and I really tried very hard. I don't think I ever really got all the way through it, but I read more than I'd ever read before.
So I would go into spurts. I would read tons over the summer and not read it all. And once I got into the Army, I decided to be disciplined. I would read one book that I just wanted to read, and then the next book I would read would be a classic from a classic list. And thus, over the 4 years I was in the Army, I read hundreds of classical books, and that I'm so glad I did read.
When I was in the military, we read things, that to understand tactics and why we did the things that we did in the military. I read Sun Tzu, The Art of War, read about Robert E. Lee, being from the South. He's kind of pertinent now. There's controversy about that, but reading about military leaders and stuff like that, to give us an idea of the kind of soldiers that we wanted to be. So history and military, those things have always interested me, and things that I've read about, wanting to know about experiences of the men in my family. Both grandfathers served in World War II. My dad and my uncle served in Vietnam. I ended up serving in Desert Storm. Reading was always something that I was interested in. It was just a way to experience new things that I wasn't able to go and see or do.
My favorite book in high school was Catcher in the Rye. Probably because the main character ran away to experience life on his own and to find himself and to it was a coming of age novel. And I think that I paralleled my life with that because I wanted to do the same thing. I wanted to get out of this small town. I wanted to experience life on my own, make my own decisions like we all do as young adults. And he had the guts to do it. I didn't, so therefore reading the novel took me to a place that I never went before.
When I got older, I became a school bus driver, and I realized that a lot of my black students didn't read well and had poor reading levels. So eventually, after I drove bus for many years and worked with students from the school bus teaching them, I finally went back to college and became a teacher.
For myself, I think that I was American bound because I love the stories coming from this country, and it's good to know cultures of different countries because, you know, there's always another side of this world. It's not only this world.
Well, when I went off to college, it was like a big awakening. I had to read. And I remember my zoology book. I enjoyed what I was reading, and I started reading. And when I came home for the first time, my mom, I read an article, I was reading something out of a magazine to her. She couldn't believe how I sounded and how confident my reading was. And here I am now teaching, and I read passages to them all the time. My heart doesn't go up in my throat anymore, but I do understand how kids feel.
Something that really marked myself as a reader was to read the legends and the history of my own country. That way I understood finally who I was and what I wanted the rest of the world to know about my culture.
I've got that, so whenever I go to my special place and I do a little bit of reading, and I just read a little bit at a time, and you know, it's fun, especially if it's war type stuff, army type stuff. I like that. Sports, yes and no, but and then like I said, like my favorite books, Gathering of Old Men, anything with any adventure, because it's got to capture my attention to start with.
I continue reading for pleasure. The only books I really didn't like to read was the one assigned in high school, but the rest, it was wonderful.
Books are a great way for you to escape because once you really get into a book, your imagination just kind of goes running wild, and then it's all you can really ever think about if it's a really good book.
My wife bought some books at North Carolina A&T last year, and I thought they were a little love stories. So I'm reading it to see what she was reading, and they were like murder mysteries. And as I kept turning the pages and reading more and more, and you know, and they had a little bit of innuendo about certain stuff. I guess kids maybe shouldn't read right away, but it kept grabbing my attention. So by the end of the day, probably in about 2 days, just going in, I'd read the book, just picking it up occasionally, because when I got stuck on it, you're reading 20, 30, 40 pages at a time, and you don't even realize it.
Reading, because I love adventure and reading. I find adventure in reading. Reading is learning. When I read, I get knowledge, and of course, knowledge is power.
Yeah, I like to read sports magazines. Basically, I like to read a lot of money magazines, world books, geographical, you know, stuff like that. Because a lot of times, whenever you know about your money, but whenever you can study about your money to find out like what your 401k does and everything, you know, I'm a numbers freak, so a lot of times learning about how my money works for me and what I can do to invest and stuff like that, it takes you a long way.
aside from reading for work, I love to read crime novels. John Grisham, John Sanford's my favorite. The Prey series he wrote, I love that. I also love to read about scripture and devotional Bible devotionals and trying to better myself. Growing up.
You better start reading because it will take you to places even if you are not there.
I think we can travel the world by reading a book.
If you're stationary in one place, it will take you a lot of different places. A lot of times reading, even though you can't be there physically, mentally it can get you there, and you can learn about the different cultures of other people and
You could imagine yourself in that place, and for all you know, you will be in that place. Like what I am right now, I imagine myself to be in the United States when I was 7, and now I'm here.
It doesn't matter what you read, just read. You'll get better at it. So if you like cars, pick up Motor Trend. If you like sports, pick up Sports Illustrated. Anything will help you become a better reader. So don't think that you have to read something you don't enjoy.
I can do a lot of mathematic reading, but that's not the same. It counts, but that'll bore most people to tears. But for me, it's interesting because I like reading stuff that other people don't like to know about.
Sure. And if you don't enjoy it, put it down. I've tried to read Moby Dick 5 times, never got past page 50.
And it just kind of makes life more fun. I mean, life itself is fun, but dragons are cool.